I'm gonna talk about the building the plan, designing, bringing value and designing the plan piece, and go back into some more detail of it. And it's one of those things where we talk about it a lot because again, just working virtually with new agents a lot, these last couple months. I think it's the thing that Dom and I have noticed that is missed the most in the sales process. So for the agent that's like, I got the script down. I, for the most part, know how to get somebody from A to Z of a sales call. The part that I think could use the most work, and I'm telling you, when you have this down, it'll drastically increase the amount of people that you close because early on when you're not really great at bringing value, which we're all in that position when we start, so it's okay. Um, it's kind of like get them on the phone, tell them who you are, go through some health stuff, and then show some numbers and hope it sticks. Now, the great thing about calling leads is that because you have a license and because they filled out a form for insurance, you will make money doing that. Like you will help some people out. But Lacey, Zach, Chris, Jason, like the people that have really started to take this thing to the next level or on writing 20 plus thousand or on track to write 20 plus thousand a month, I'm sure you guys can agree that switch is when you go from just kind of talking people and showing numbers to like bringing true value to people and like really getting a good understanding of their need and how you can help them. And so there's actually like substance behind the numbers. And so that's what I'm going to go through today because I'm much more of a follow a schedule guy and Dom is much more of a let's get 27 people on a Zoom call and I'll wing it guy, but I go by my schedule. So today on the schedule is talking about bringing value, designing the plan, showing numbers. Um, and so I'm gonna break it down super simply. So write this down because this is like the high level view of how to view the entire sales process, and then we'll go into this building the plan piece in some more detail. So write down one script. Okay, so the script that we all have, the script that we practice, that we role play, that you did for your release presentation. That's what I mean. There's a lot of pieces to that script. So I'm not trying to downplay it, but that's like the first step. You got to get somebody through the script, right? Step two, financial inventory. So filling out the notes of income and budget, health, existing insurance, that type of stuff, right? So once we get that filled out, after you know everything that you learn in the script, everything that the information that you collect in financial inventory, before we show numbers or before we start an application, we then have to build the plan. So, number three, build the plan. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, designing the plan. And then step four, after we build the plan, that's when it's show numbers or start an application, right? To see if we can get them pre-approved. And assuming they are pre-approved, give them what the plan is going to look like and have them pick the amount of coverage they want and then complete the application, right? But step three, build the plan. All right. So that's the piece that, you know, eh, script, make it sound like you're not reading, right? Financial inventory, ask some good questions, like get thorough with getting an idea of their budget and health. But building the plan is something that is just more, it can be more vague, it can be more case by case. So what I'm going to give you is really the blueprint for how to do the same thing every time when it comes to building the plan. Right. And again, the deeper you get with this part of it, the more value you'll bring. But I do want to give you like the baseline of if you do at least this every single time, you'll get yourself started by having enough good information that when you show numbers, there's going to be true value and substance behind the numbers, as opposed to just showing numbers and hoping they like the price. Right. All right. So, and again, this is, you know, assuming that this is a ethos, final expense, vet lead, right? This is not like IUL or mortgage protection, but the leads that most of us are working. Um, and again, also kind of assuming that this is more so geared towards like final expenses, right? Of the reason why somebody wants to fill out the form. So going back to it, like in our script, right? Um, it asked the question. So Lacey, were you looking into life insurance because you already have some in place and you want to add more? Do you not have any set up yet? Right? We always ask that question. We get an idea of who their beneficiary is. And now question number 3 on the veteran lead script. Now, were you mainly looking for coverage just to pay for funeral and final expenses? Or did you also want to leave a little extra money behind for your family, like replace lost income, cover any bills, or just kind of leave a gift behind? So that is the question that we're going to basically be like coming back to when we get to the point where we build the plan. So initially in the script, I just get an idea of kind of like a high level view of what you're looking to do on this with this coverage, right? And let's say, for example, you say, yeah, mainly my goal is to, just cover final expenses. Got it. Again, I'm just trying to get a fairly high level view of why you filled out this form. I'm not going to dive like super deep into it right now, but I am going to write that down. I'm going to write down, all right, final expenses was your main goal. Cool. Um, Anything that happened make you start looking into this, continue to go through the rest of the script here, right? So got that. Then I go through financial inventory. I get an idea of how much you make. I get an idea of what all your health stuff is, right? So now the information I have, again, at a high level view is beneficiary, why you're looking for coverage. In this case, you say final expenses, how much you make, and in full picture of your health. So like when I'm on the phone, I go, all right, cool. So this is the part, this is step 3 now. I'm going to start diving into it. And this, what I'm going to say right now is like, if you're struggling with this piece or you're not sure once you do to get to this part, just copy this. If you're already selling 20 plus thousand a month, do your thing. But if you're not, copy this part. Okay, Lacey. So now just to get a little bit more specific with how much coverage we even need to look at. You mentioned that your main goal with this is to cover your final expenses, right? Now, not that you have to have everything all the way mapped out or all the way set in stone today, but just generally speaking, do you know, and role play with me here, Lacey, do you know whether you'd want to be buried or cremated?
Cremated.
Cremated. Got it. Okay. Have you ever had anybody in your life pass away where you've been involved with covering the expenses or just kind of seeing what it costs to have that taken care of?
Yes, I lost my 2 daughters.
Hmm, got it. Okay. Sorry to hear. Pause there. Okay. The 2 questions that you start this off with to get them to start talking is knowing that they want to have their final expenses covered. Do you know whether you want to be buried or cremated? Whatever they say to that, have you ever had anybody in your life pass, or have you ever been involved with handling that? Does that make sense? So again, I'm getting more specific with how much coverage do we need to look at? Let's assign, before we just show numbers, let's assign a value to the numbers. Buried or cremated is the way you start that off in a final expense conversation. Then get them to talk about their experience. Now, what I used to do and what I hear happen a lot when you're new, and it's okay, but try to, we talk about if you ever catch yourself in a situation where you're about to like tell somebody something, a good rule of thumb is ask yourself, is this something that I could ask as a question as opposed to telling them? And what I mean by that is when Lacey says she knows she wants to be cremated, I don't immediately just go, okay, well, cremations are $5,000, right? Which I used to. I'm like, okay, you want to be cremated? Cremation costs $5,000. So we need at least $5,000. And they're like, all right, sure, dude. But if I can get you to tell me that stuff, like the goal here is to get to the point where you design your plan as the client and I just kind of lead you in that direction by asking you some questions as opposed to me saying like, okay, this is what we're going to look at. And it may or may not really even hit home for you as the client, right? So do you want to be buried or cremated? Have you ever had anybody in your life pass that you've been involved or kind of seen what that costs? Yes, with my daughters. Got it. So the next question is, that's terrible. I'm sorry to hear. Do you remember what it took, like financially, to have that taken care of?
Yeah, so it was years ago, so it's probably increased, but each one was eight to $10,000 total.
Got it. Okay. 8 to 10. Got it. How and you can make this stuff up, whatever, but just
This
as
is
a
real
role play.
life, but yeah.
Okay. You don't have to stay real life if you don't want to. But um how did it how was that paid for? Like, did they have any life insurance? Did somebody come out of pocket? Like, how was that taken care of?
So the first one, I was a teen parent, so I Ronald McDonald House actually helped with hers. And so the second one we had to family GoFundMe, or GoFundMe wasn't a thing back then, but I think it was mainly family.
Got it. Okay.
Raising money was a lot different back then than it is now. So you
Right.
had to just kind of reach out to sphere of influence and see who was willing to help out.
Right. Okay. And then again, for sake of role play, and so you're 78, Lacey. You mentioned your 45-year-old son is your beneficiary, right?
Hmm.
Okay. Um, assuming that, when you pass, there's probably not going to be some sort of, program like that, or, how would it look for your son if, God forbid, you pass anytime soon? It would be up to him to come up with that 8 to 10,000 to handle the cremation, assuming, that's what it does cost for you to be everything to be taken care of for you.
Probably pretty difficult.
Yeah. And again, there's so many directions you can take that, but what I try to do when I talk about this part of the sale is like, what are the step by step, like bare minimum word tracks I can use every single time, and to know that the conversation is going to go some different directions based on their response to that, right? So, do you know whether you want to be buried or cremated? Have you ever had somebody in your life? And if you're writing, like, these are the things to write down if you're taking notes. Do you know if you want to be buried or cremated? Have you ever seen what that costs to take care of that, whether it is a burial or a cremation, right? Um, yes. Okay, got it. How much was it? What did it look like? Like, what was the total amount that was needed to have that taken care of? How was that paid for? Right? Like, did they have life insurance? If the answer is yes, great. So you see the value in having life insurance. If the answer is no, got it. What did they do? Like, how was that handled? What did they do to get the money to pay for that? Was there a GoFundMe? Did somebody come out of savings? Did somebody, you know, take money out of their 401k? Like, how did somebody come out of pocket to handle that? Got it. So you paint that picture, right, of their past experience. Now tie it back to our phone call, this situation. So you mentioned your son is a beneficiary. If you don't set this up today, what is it going to look like for him to have that type of, like, to take care of that? Does that make sense? So those are my, like, step by step, same thing every single time. The only difference is the client's, you know, specific situation that may take a little bit more to get there or whatever. But like, those are the same things to ask every single time. So if you're somebody that, if you're like, this is not a conversation I'm ever having on the phones, I know I'm talking with people and they say that they want their final expenses covered, but I'm not getting into this. Like, I hope you wrote that down, but if not, we're going to post the recording. Like, take that piece right there. This is what I did when I was new. Like, I took the stuff that I knew that I was missing in my sales presentation and I wrote it down. In the field, I would bring it with me, right? Like, I'd have a binder and the client wouldn't be able to see, but like, I would have like questions that I have to ask, in the binder. Um, in telesales, the client's not seeing you. You just have it up in your space, right? So you guys can have that line of questioning, like, printed out or on your computer. Just ask those same things every time. So that is the client that has had a personal experience. Okay. Lacey, we're gonna start over. Give me more of like a no, I haven't, when I ask you if for any personal experience. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Um, so Lacey, not that you have to have it all the way like set in stone or mapped out today, but again, to get a better idea of how much coverage we even need to look at for you here, do you know whether you want to be buried or cremated?
Buried.
Buried. Got it. Okay. Is that something that you've ever dealt with? Like, have you ever had anybody in your life past where you've been involved with, handling the expenses of a burial or contributing at least?
No.
No. Really? So again, pause real quick. Like, I don't really ever believe them. Like, I always ask a few more questions to like make sure. Because if Lacey is 78 and she's never seen somebody be buried, like I don't maybe, but chances are slim, right? So okay, really. So you've never like had like a parent, sibling, really close friend where you've at all been a part of handling any of the final arrangements?
No, I mean I've had people
I know
die,
you're
but
like
no.
struggling to do the role play. You're like, how is that even possible? You know what I mean? But yeah, just say no.
No.
Okay. All good. So I know I said earlier, don't jump straight to education, right? But I hope this is making sense. But like, this is the time where I'm gonna kind of more do some education, right? Because like, she's not giving me anything, but we do have to design a plan. So now I'm kind of more stepping into like consultant role than like deep question asker. Does that make sense? So Lacey goes, I know I want to be buried, but by the grace of God, I've never had anybody in my life pass where I've been involved with it. So I like literally have, well, I guess this would be the next question asked before that. Got it. Do you know at all, Lacey, like how much it would cost in your area to cover a burial? Like, is that something you've looked into or you're even aware of at all?
No, not really.
Got it. Okay. So again, I'm really that most people will, you know what I mean? But again, for the sake of this role play, like sometimes you do need to kind of go down that educational path, which is why I'm doing it for the sake of this. Okay. So, Lacey, of course, it can vary, right? Depending on where you live, the type of casket, the type of service, there's a lot of factors that can determine the cost of everything. But generally speaking, I've been doing this for 5 years. I've helped out thousands of clients cover their burial. Most, let's say it was the vet lead, most veterans, what it takes to cover everything is typically in the ballpark of around 15,000. Okay. So that's taking into the account the cost of the casket, opening and closing of the ground, the headstone, embalmment, service fees. And those are just like the basics. Now, I have clients like and steal this word track right here. I have like Pacific Islander clients that have very elaborate, rituals that they can cost up to like 35, 40,000. And then I have, plenty of clients that are like nothing fancy, don't care, just a regular pine box and just put me in the ground. No, and that can maybe be somewhere in the ballpark of 10, 12,000. So I know that that's a big range, but since you don't know, and we're just kind of have to throw something out here since you don't have a ton of like specifics of what you want done or experience with this, 15,000 is that kind of low end safe number for kind of a more simpler service to have everything squared away. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. 20,000 is kind of taking into account some additional unforeseen expenses. 25,000 is more like really being safe. And then, in case they maybe want a nicer casket, a ton of flowers, something like that. Right. So that's kind of the range of numbers we'll look at to make sure little Timmy isn't having to come out of his own pocket for your to have all your stuff taken care of when it comes to a burial. Are we on the same page?
Yes.
Cool. Now let's do the same thing, but for cremation.
Okay.
Um, so Lacey, just so I know how best I can help. Again, not that you have to have it all the way mapped out today, but generally speaking, do you know whether you want to be buried or cremated?
Probably cremated.
Cremated, got it. Okay. Have you ever had anybody in your life pass where you've been involved with that, just kind of seen what it takes to cover all that?
No. Am I still no, right?
Still no. Still for
Okay.
some crazy reason no. Okay, really. So never had like a relative, like parent, sibling, like anybody pass where you've all like contributed or at least been a part of handling that?
No.
Okay. Lucky you. Um, are you aware at all what it costs, like what it takes to have that taken care of? Like it's
I don't
something you've
know,
looked
four or
into at
five
all?
hundred
Like,
dollars.
say that again.
I don't know, maybe $400 or $500.
Unfortunately, a little more than that. So again, if you've had an experience with this, then you would know. So again, this is me having done this all day, every day for 5 years, helping out thousands of clients, um, and specializing in helping families with this exact situation. Just a cremation itself, again, it can vary a little bit, but it's typically in the ballpark of like 1,500 to 3,000. So I'm not saying there's not some, you know, magical system out there where for some reason you can have it taken care of for 4 to 500, but I would have never heard of it, and I do this all day. And generally speaking, what it's going to take of every, funeral home out there is in the ballpark of 1,500 to 3,000 just for the cremation itself. And that's not taking into account, a nice urn or any sort of additional services like a transportation of the body or a service or anything like that. Okay. So 1,500 to 3,000, like just for the cremation itself. Um, and then most people do have some sort of, service or some other things that come up. So like if you're like, hey Bryce, I just want to cover my immediate expenses of just the cremation and nothing else. I don't care about leaving extra money or leaving a cushion for unforeseen expenses or anything like that. Then 5,000 is that plan, right? That's how we set up vets and their families with at least having the cremation covered. But honestly, in most people's experiences, there's some other stuff that comes up with that. And to not put that on your son, it's usually safe to look at around 8 to 10,000 to make sure he has enough for that, right? Now, anything above 10,000 is just kind of that extra money to leave behind for your family as a gift, cover some bills, some stuff outside of just the immediate final expenses. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So do you want to like, are you telling me like, hey, Bryce, I only want to cover just the cremation and nothing else? Or did you want to leave some extra room for some unforeseen expenses and maybe a little extra money left behind?
Probably just the basics.
Okay, so we're gonna look at a $5,000 plan, okay? And then you tell me if you
Okay.
want any more than this, but 5,000 is now you will get people like Lacey. Do you write $5,000 cremation plans sometimes?
Yes.
Yes, right? You will. So like if you have, 72-year-old Jerry that's like, nope, just cremation. All right, cool. Like, well, I'm good. I'm not trying to overdo it here. But most people you'll want to have some extra to leave behind. So that's the kind of educational piece, right? Of like here's you're the professional on the phone, right? So I'm not an expert in this. Like I'm not like I don't work at a funeral home, but fair to say, Lacey, like if I at least just tell you that, like did I come across as a professional that knows what it takes to have a body handled when you die?
Yes.
Right. And so like those are just the basics of like, okay, cool. I'm the consultant here. I'm the professional. These are the numbers that we need to look at to make sure your son isn't in a tough spot. Does that make sense? So that's the kind of educational piece. If it has to get to that point. Ideally it doesn't because you give me a story or an experience and we build the plan around that, right? If we're like, yeah, my cousin died, we had him buried, we did a viewing, blah, 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 blah. It was around 20,000 to have all that handled. And that was like 2 years ago. Got it. Terribly sorry to hear, ask my question. So here's what we're going to look at, Lacey. Assuming your situation is going to be somewhat similar to your cousin's, we'll look at a minimum of 20,000. That's obviously not taking into account like additional unforeseen expenses or inflation or anything like that, but we'll use 20,000 as kind of like our baseline minimum of making sure at least that's covered, right? But we'll also look at like a 25 and a 30 to kind of leave that cushion, right? So like the best situation, ideal situation is the client tells you what it costs from their experience and then you don't have to be Mr. Pull numbers out of thin air, an educational person, because you're just solving the problem that they told you they've experienced. Does that make sense? So ideally, you get them to that point because although I may come across as a professional and or I am a professional, I am a consultant, you're still a random stranger on the phone that just called them. And so they're not going to believe you as much as they believe their own personal experience. So always default to get them to talking about their personal experience before you just like Mr. Insurance salesperson shove numbers down their throat of like, hey, this is what it costs. You know what I mean? But admittedly, you will have to lean on that sometimes if the client cannot tell you what they have experienced or what they've seen that it takes to cover that stuff. Um, the last piece to this is stories, right? Like Lacey, when you talk to somebody that knows they want to be cremated, um, you having personal experience in a story is also way more powerful than you just being an educational like consultant. Does that make sense? Got it. Well, you know, I guess you're really lucky that you've never had to deal with that. I had, for me, when my dad passed, because he did, my dad passed about 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. This is what it looked like for us, right? He was cremated. He was in law enforcement. So as you can imagine, like a good chunk of the community wanted to come pay the respect. So we had to have like a decent size, service. There was food there, that type of stuff. So just the cremation itself was 3,000. But when you take into account just some of those additional expenses, but those immediate expenses, it was in the ballpark of like a little over 8,000. So that was 2019. It's 2025 now. Things are only getting more expensive. So, Chris, if I'm gonna, um, help you with the peace of mind of making sure you at least have those immediate expenses taken care of, I would not recommend anything less than 10,000. Right. And typically clients are like, yeah, that sounds about right. You know what I mean? So we'll use 10,000 as like our baseline minimum, and then we'll go from there. So you can certainly consult and educate and tell them what stuff costs. But if you have a story, if you have a personal experience, definitely share that because that they believe that story more so than you pulling numbers out of thin air. Well, that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to get out of just seeing myself view now so I can see everybody. We'll see who stayed with me there. Good chunk. Kaylee fell asleep. Kylie fell asleep, but everyone else good. Um,
Hey, I was going to just
yeah,
comment
go
on that
ahead,
real quick,
Jason.
Bryce. So, and I think it's very important to ask those questions about what they have experienced because for many reasons. I mean, I've had people on the phone that, um, hey, how much have you been around a cremation? How much does it cost? And some people were like 12 grand. And it could be.
Yep.
And that you're not just leaving money on the table if you just say, well, all you need is five. If you're all of a sudden just everybody's five, it's not. And some people might say, well, it's only 300, and you don't want to hit them with 8 to 10. Then it's just you got to be on the same page, or it's just going to like, you know, open up a can of worms on that. So I
Because
think it's important.
yeah, absolutely. Because you're helping them. Like you're giving, what you're doing is you're helping them with peace of mind. So if Jason, if you're like, everybody in my family, it's only been 4,000, I'm not going to be like, well, it could be 10. I'm like, if I help you with a $5,000 plan, you have peace of mind. Like, let me not try to like, you're gonna dislike me if I'm like trying to like oversell it here, right? And same thing the other way. If something like, yeah, everybody's 25,000, they're like, okay, well, we gotta look at 25,000, even though you just
Yeah.
want to be cremated. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, it's your help. If you even if there's a time and a place, but at the end of the day, if you get them to talk about their personal experience and you solve that problem, like you help them with what they what their experiences, what they were thinking, and you bring a lot more value again than just throwing stuff out there.
Yeah, and it basically you're helping them spend the money. I mean, these people are never going to see the money. I mean, obviously they know that in their head. All this to them is just a bill. It's like, well, I got to add another $100 to my bill. But if you're spending the money and they see it being spent to watching and imagining their kids using that money for all that stuff, and then having a little extra money in their hand, I mean, you got to just create that like picture in their head. Otherwise, it's just I got 10 grand, it's $100 a month, and now I got to pay a bill, and I don't want to pay it. So, So spending the money too is huge. What I've been doing too, just spending the money, every penny. It's like, okay, well, they're going to be left over with 3 grand. Is that going to be enough? After they pay the burial. Of course, 20 years from now, things might go up a little bit, and then you just got to like just put that in their head, and then they'll bump themselves up. That they have the money to do it, or else they wouldn't put a form, they wouldn't fill out a form if they're just broke. I mean, some people, yeah, but they still want maybe they think maybe they can only afford $30 a month, and that's okay too. But everybody wants something. You don't fill out a form if you just have no I, concept of spending money, at least a little bit,
Yep.
sometimes a lot.
100%. And again, this is I we use the word track a lot, like, hey, my job, Jason, is just to help you find the minimum that you need so your family has at least that. And then anything else on top of that is just because you want some more. But I at least need to make sure we cover the bare minimum that covers what you need, but also no brainer fits your budget. So to your point, Jason, like if you just at least start there, you'll help the client solve that initial, like, all right, when I die, the immediate expenses that are going to be needed right away, that's covered at an amount that I can afford. And if they have extra money in their budget for this and want more coverage, they will tell you. Right. So like I had this guy on Thursday, knew he wanted to be buried, had some experience with it, was around like 12,000 or so. So I was like, all right, we're going to look at the 15 minimum plan, 20 a little extra, 25. I showed him those numbers and he was like, I kind of want 35. And I already knew we could afford 35 because I had gone through his budget. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, cool. Here's 35. Right. But I came across as somebody that was not trying to oversell him. I came across as the guy that's making sure your bare minimum is covered at a rate that you can no brainer afford. And the client told me that, yes, I can afford that, but I also would like some more than that. Right. And so that's the place that you want to get to.
Can I point out something to you,
Yes.
Bryce? So most of you new agents realize that he did not ever ask me how much coverage was I looking to get today. That's been one thing that I've been hearing a lot commonly. You're setting yourself up for a trap if you specifically ask them right off the bat, well, how much coverage you wanted? $50,000 worth of coverage today, and then they can't get $50,000 worth of coverage. So if you paid attention to Bryce, you notice that he never asked me specifically the amount that I wanted right off the bat.
Or what your budget was.
Yeah.
You're
That's
you're you're
been,
yeah, you're designing what they need based off of you're designing the plan based off what they need, right? And you're discovering that through good questions. And then we'll find out the affordability stuff, you know what I mean? So um if Lacey, you're 82 and you make $800 a month and your final wishes call for you needing $25,000 worth of life insurance, I'm not going to show you 25,000, right? Because I know that you make $800 a month and 25,000 is probably like damn near 800 a month. So I'm going to go, got it. Here's what we're going to do, Lacey. We're going to contribute as much as you possibly can to that, but hope that you can kind of find some other avenues to cover the rest. But what we're going to look at is like 5 and 8,000, right? And so I'm not determining, like that's the only time where I'm determining the budget. Like, but I'm not asking you what your budget is. Like I'm asking you, what do you need? Okay, we got it. I know what you need to make sure your family's not in a tough spot. Now I'm going to tell you how much it costs to cover that. Does that make sense? Any questions about any of that? Or what questions do you have about that? Nailed it, huh? Cool. Any questions about anything else?